Hey, YouTube slash Reddit slash everyone else I talk to. So this is a hopefully slideshow recording of the construction of a piece of terrain that I made. It's had a couple of different names. It's been called Rivet City. It's been called Hotel Necromunda. I think the one I'm going to go with is the Asterisk, based on the geometric shape of it. This is a slideshow. There's not any video in it. It's just me talking about the process for how I went about making it. So here we go. This is a SketchUp 3D rendering of my idea. So this is one of the first plans that I had. I put this together on SketchUp. It's just a pretty basic 3D model, threw some ideas up there, moved some stuff around. It's really good if you want to make measurements, if you're not sure how something's going to work out, if you have some ideas about what you want to do, but you're not sure if it's going to work. I think this originally had like 2-inch wide floors. The final result had 2.5 inches. So of course, if you do this, you're not fixed at what you get, but it's a good way of laying things out, and then you can look at them and go, okay, this is going to work. This isn't going to work. I don't like this. I like this. This is a physical model that I made because I've noticed when I make 3D models that I bring them into life, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not that. I didn't think about that right, or the scale was off, or I didn't think about this fact. And so this was just a small 3D physical model that I made of it. Obviously, it doesn't have all the same parts. You can see a lot of the notes written down on there. It also helped me with a layout of, okay, these pieces are going to go here. I wanted an equal distribution, equal but not copy paste sort of thing, not patterned distribution of terrain features throughout the whole piece. So there's boxes on the 3rd level on one panel, but they're on the 5th level on another panel, that kind of thing. So I wanted to distribute them around, but I wanted them even so that one panel doesn't have all the boxes or all the ladders or something. So this particular tool helped for that. And then we get started with the construction. So this is a piece of watermelon carton that you can see them at a grocery store. I actually got this from behind a grocery store. I talked to them like, hey, you got a bunch of scrap cardboard, I want it. So pumpkins also come in these. They're 3-ply, which is amazing. It took so much, reduced the workload by so much. But they're 3-ply corrugated cardboard. So corrugated cardboard, as you know, it has a layer of cardboard. It has a kind of wavy corrugated section in the middle, and then another layer of cardboard. That's regular cardboard, or that's regular corrugated cardboard. You stick 3 of those back to back, so it's 9 pieces of cardboard. And they're about a 1/2 inch thick, but that is not enough for us. Here are 2 pieces of watermelon carton cardboard glued together. So I used this alternating. So you want one piece to be corrugated in one direction. You want the other piece to be corrugated in the other direction to resist forces in all directions. Anyway, I have a bunch of those cut out and then glued together, 6 of them in back. That brings us to about 1 inch thick, and that forms the 6 different walls of our structure. All right, so next we have the press. This is used to make sure the glue sets. This is my collection of Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing game rule books. And then this was used throughout this construction process. So I would glue pieces together, put them under the press, leave them for probably a day, half a day, come back to them the next day, and I could start working on them again. After the press is a section where I note that where everything's going to be at. So these are 4-inch. It's 4 inches between. I don't actually know what that 4-inch line means, but I will tell you this: it's 4 inches between buttresses, and those will come up later, and it's 3.5 inches between floors with a 1/2 inch floor section. So here's another version of that: 1/2 inch floor section, 3.5 inches gap in between them. And then we set all of this up, draw everything out. That's what that looks like. And then we mark out the doors. So I added cut out doors. I cut out. I'll call them windows. They're any reasonable person would not call them windows, but I'm going to call them windows because that's conceptually how I envisioned them when I was building them. Those are not the right dimensions for my door. Those wound up being the dimensions I had. I don't know why I thought those were the correct dimensions for the door, but they weren't. So the door pieces I have do not fit those dimensions, though that's what I cut. I'm just going to stop right now and say, use metric. This was a terrible idea. So that's what that looks like after you cut out the doors and windows. And I just want to make a note here. I really like this one piece because it has the caution tape, the hazard tape design on it. I wanted to do more of that. There wound up being 0 of that in this. I might go back and add those later, but I really like the caution tape look. So I like this one piece. That obviously that pattern didn't go anywhere because I, covered it all up. And then next, okay, so this is, how to explain this? So the detail here is difficult to see, but each one of those are 4" by 3.5" inch, with the exceptions of the one side, which of course would be half that size. They're 2 inches wide and 3.5 inches tall. Those are pieces of cardstock. So I can cut out about 6 of those per 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And then they've been punched. And if you have ever talked to me on Reddit, you know exactly what I espouse this technique all the time because I think it's amazing. It's very cheap, especially if you're going to cover things with paper anyway. But they've been, so you take that, you flip it over, you punch rivets into the back of it, creates a little nipple essentially. There's a little bump on the front of it, and then so you just do a line of rivets. So each one of those has a line of rivets around the edges, not the top edge, although what is the top in this case doesn't really matter. But and then they're glued down, and then there's the channel in between. The floor is going to go there, so I didn't need to cover that up. I could have, but I didn't want to spend the time and energy to do that. Here is a door. So then I had to, because it's cut out of corrugated cardboard, and corrugated cardboard for the most part looks ugly, I had to cover that up. So I covered up the interior with just a strip of 1 inch thick cardstock folded to fit into that gap. Many of you on Reddit like these. These are computer fans, as you probably know, and just set them into the walls, and then run this strip along the inside. So the computer fans are not 1 inch thick, so I had to cover up a little bit of cardboard there. The edges look kind of messy, but that will be cleaned up later. All right, so we've set in the computer fans. There's also computer fan grills, and then this other piece, that gray piece of plastic there is actually, so I ordered a bunch of 3D printed pieces from a friend of mine. Talk to me about a link if you want to buy 3D printed stuff from him. He's fantastic. He worked with me on designing and then building, and the greatest online purchase experience I've ever had in my life. So definitely, if you're in the market for 3D printing, let me know and I'll set you up. Well, he'll set you up. I do zero work. Anyway, so that when I talked to him originally, I was like, hey, I want this, and then he sent me a picture of him, and I just gave him the green light without thinking. And I was like, yeah, that looks great. And then I got him. I'm like, wait, what the hell is this? So that is supposed to be a bridge, but it doesn't have any of the railings because I told him to remove the railings, and so he did. And then I was like, oh, wait, I need railings. So that's what that piece is. Wound up working great because I just reordered the railings, the correct pieces from him. But it's kind of this trellis pattern. I wanted a trellis. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but I got these from him, and so that's how I did it. All right, so this is a wall section, obviously, and then these are the doors. As you can see, the doors are too big for the cutout because I just didn't measure them properly. But that's what I got out of that. It works. It actually works really well. At least I think it does. You can look at them and see, okay, these are definitely made of different pieces. But I don't think there's a problem with that. Like, it's kind of a ramshackle. It's the underhive. It's, there's a lot of problems with it. But that's what that is. Okay, so here's a little bit of a cleaner view at the nippling or the riveting process. And it is a riveting process. There's like 40,000 plus rivets in this project. So anyway, these are 0.5 centimeter strips. Metric is best of cardstock cut at an angle so that I could fit them together supposedly cleanly. Didn't actually come out that cleanly, but that's the plan. And then punched in the backside with the rivets to just like say, hey, look, I'm supposed to be here. And that's kind of what that effect is for. Here's another one, a closer look at that. So each one of those is a rivet section. All right, and then we glue them on. This kind of cleans up the edges around the difference between the wall and the interior, because they are not very clean initially. I wasn't going to spend any time trying to do any precision work on that. It's an inch thick glued section of cardboard and me and an X-Acto knife, so that was never going to get cleaned up. So what I just did is covering them up with the cardboard, and it also kind of it's this kind of edge you want. In my opinion, you want this edge anytime you hit it, because you're like, hey, this is the edge. This is supposed to be the edge. Nothing broke. Nothing went wrong here. This is how this is supposed to look. All right, so that is pretty much it for the wall sections until it comes to some more construction later. Next are the buttresses. This is what a sheet of foam core marked out by buttresses looks like initially. There's like 400 buttresses on this. So yeah, that took a while. Then they get cut into strips. Then those strips get cut into buttresses. Foam core is foam core. If you spray paint foam core, you're going to eat the foam out of the middle of it while leaving the paper on the sides. If that is not the effect that you're going for, then you have to do something to cover that up. You can use Mod Podge, but I chose, foolishly, to use paper. So here it is. Yeah, so if there's 400 something pieces of buttress, then there's 400 pieces of little paper that need to get glued onto them. Cut out, scored so you can fold them, and then glued onto the buttresses. And there they are. And there is a pile of buttresses. So that is not 400 buttresses, because 400 plus buttresses never existed at any one time. This is some number of buttresses in a pile. And I'd just do like 100, 150 buttresses, start gluing them on. Do another 150 buttresses, glue those on. Do another, and yeah, it's you can see Discord in the background. It was me hanging out with friends on Discord and gluing buttresses together. So then you glue the buttresses onto the walls at 4-inch long marks. There's a lot of ways to do this. I just chose to do them this way. It could have been done in a variety of different ways. I thought about having one stick out on the end, but I just didn't want to do that. I like this section. Sort of the game and design philosophy into the terrain is you want to have sections like, so in Necromunda, and they own my own version, my own game that I'm putting together. It's called Cities of Death. The units move at a standard 4 inches apart. So in a movement phase, you want to have the player experience, look, I'm moving 4 inches. My character is now in a new situation, new place. That should have a new experience. So if I call them encounters because that's the terminology that we use in Dungeons and Dragons, but each encounter should have a different experience. You should be able to move from one encounter to the next. If you run, then you're moving double that. So you can experience 2 encounters. You can go through 2 encounters. So that was my design philosophy when I went into this. I haven't play tested it. I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one, but that was it. So the buttresses kind of demark that. Each buttress is 4 inches apart, and it says, this is going to be the section that has this kind of cover, or this is going to be the section that has the ladder, or the stairs, or the doorway, or the window, or whatever. And so each one of those has a different it's like it delineates, here is what you should be expecting for, if you move your model into this area, you should expect to have this effect, right? And it very clearly delineates that for the player, so there's less confusion, less ambiguity about, okay, what's going on, what does cover, what does not cover. That's how the table is set up to indicate to the players, here's what you should expect from each one of these areas. And the buttresses as limit lines for that, they help reinforce that into the minds of the players and also me as the designer. That's a close-up of a buttress glued on to a wall. You can see at the bottom there are rivets, 40,000 rivets. All right, so this was new for me. I've never worked with wood before. I mean, in a context of a terrain project, other than MDF basing. Yeah, I don't think that counts. So this is the dimensions that I wanted to give to a carpenter. I wanted to shop local and give this to a carpenter and say, I want this cut from a section of 4x4. Designed it for a 4x4, which, as you can see from the measurements, are not actually 4 inches wide, but you probably know that. So it was designed to be cut from a 4x4 into these sections, and I could attach them onto the panels. Couldn't find a carpenter in the area to do the work, so I talked to my friend Gino. Gino, if you're watching this, thank you so much. I could not have done this without you. And he let me use his table saw, and we cut out a section these dimensions. The 60-degree measurement is the important part. If you're gonna, if you're gonna copy this, I'd love to see a bunch of copycat projects of this. If you do this, definitely tell me. But it's a lot of work, so wait for a pandemic to come on and have all the time and space to yourself. Anyway, so this is the measurements for that particular piece. And here are the pieces once they've been cut out. Lying against my wall. There's 2 of them missing. Where they are. There they are. Yeah, so some of them were cut short because I had the guy at hardware store do a rough cut. I'm still struggling with that. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. I think I have a solution for it. But if you set 2 of the panels, actually all the panels, if you set them on their own, they just lean over. None of them are flat on the bottom. They're flat on the top, which I thought was going to be important for some reason. I think it still is. I got latches to fix them together so they hold fast. Then I lost the latches. I have no idea where they are. So I'm going to go buy some so that I find the old ones. Because that's how that always works. Labeled them because I wanted, once I set them in place, I wanted to know, what is what and who is who. So that I didn't have to resize everything. Bought my first power drill and then power drilled some holes in these. So I drilled holes into these pieces through one piece of wood, through the cardboard, through the other piece of wood on the other side. And then also cut the wider, so that's the drill hole for the bolt, and then cut the wider well for the washer to sit in. This is not a great angle of this, but it kind of shows you, how those lie on each other. All right, so once I got the holes drilled out, we set a washer, set a bolt. These are 4-inch bolts. They're quarter-inch wide, whatever. Pick something that works for you. That's all of them. This is me on talking to a friend of mine on Discord. Excuse me. A friend of ours was bugging him like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm listening to Saracen Zero Screw on Discord," because the screwing noise as I'm twisting all of these pieces together was pretty loud. So I had myself muted a lot, but we thought that was enjoyable. That was funny. Okay, so that's kind of a problem, right? That's a lot of excess bolt. But that's how they all look together, fixed on there. So then I did what anyone who doesn't know anything about, fastening down hardware would do, which is to just cut them off. And so I cut off all of the excess bolt ends. So now they're semi-flush together. And that is all 6 of them lying on my floor of my apartment. Um, I am especially proud of this picture because this is the first point in this project where I thought, this could actually come together. This could work. This might actually happen. Um, I did this to show a friend of mine what I was working on and like what the concept was. But at this point, I was like, you know what? This project is not going to fall apart. This is not something that I'm just going to have to scrap at some point. I was pretty proud of that, and it did. It worked out. Obviously, you've seen the whole picture of it. But this is the point in my mind where it really turned the corner from being entirely theoretical to being able to look at it and say, okay, I know what the next step is in envisioning. I mean, obviously, it's all imaginative, but before it was imaginative in my mind only, versus now I can look at it and imagine additional parts going onto it. So this is, again, inside. I've added all of the other buttresses. I've also added cladding to the interior regions to kind of like mold those together before. So I don't actually have, these are 2x4s that I've used, not 4x4s. I didn't have a way of transporting 4x4s so I could cut them. And the guy at the hardware store couldn't cut them for whatever reason. So yeah, that's what... and those are notes on the side of it. Those were originally like, okay, I'm going to plan out where each piece is going to go. Like I said before, like randomizing / distributing the terrain around the different wall sections. So I wrote on the walls, right? Because that makes sense. Figure out if you can figure out that's a problem later. Just another angle of that more impressive angle. I like these upward shots of, makes it look big and menacing and tall. All right, so these are not in chronological order. We're going back in time, but they are in like a logical fabrication order. So this is a section of floor. They are made of one of two different methods. This one will just, this is probably just the masterpiece. In that sense, I just mean it's the one that from all others are copied from, because it's easier for me to make one master and just template it down and then and go off of that. Obviously, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do a copy of a copy of a copy, because then you introduce copy errors. So I made a single master, and all of the others were copied from that. So if there's one error, at least it's systemic, and I can fix it easily, or not so easily. But that's what that piece is. That's the master. So there's two ways to do this. I'll explain this one. Either you take a section of watermelon box or pumpkin box, which is already 3-ply, and then you cut it into strips. Or you make 3-ply cardboard. So you take regular cardboard and you cut the cardboard into strips, and then you glue the 3-ply cardboard together, trying to get as much of that crisscrossing look as possible. My toes look really messed up. Anyway, so yeah, that's what that is. So it's 3-ply, and it's yeah. So it's just me making a strip of that, then cutting it into sections, and then continuing into the strip of that. I have an 8-foot long table, so it was me gluing all of those down and running them across, and then chopping them up. And then those get tossed into the press, pressed down to make sure that the glue holds fast together. So with 6 wall sections, 2 sides per section, that's 12 sides, times 6 levels of this, there are 72 floor sections. I have no idea how many appear in that image. I'm not going to count. It's the internet, so I'm sure somebody will count and correct me later. But yeah, it's a lot of floor sections. Okay, so then the top of the floor. This is called Ida fabric. I believe this is 14 loops or 14 threads per inch. It might be 12 per inch. Regardless, it's Ida fabric, also known as granny grid. It's what you would use if you were going to cross stitch. I wanted it to look like diamond tread, so I cut it on a diagonal, which had its own problems. Those will come up later. But that's what I use for the diamond tread. I looked online, and there's people who are going to sell me diamond tread to cover all of my floor sections. For this project, it would have come out to something like $300 to buy diamond tread online. Like model diamond tread, not actual diamond tread, model pages of diamond tread. I didn't want to pay that. So this is another shot of Ida fabric. I might be pronouncing that right. It's AIDA, which I would say is Ida. It might be Ada fabric or something else entirely. Anyway, that's a closer up shot. This is another piece that I was a little unsure about. So I conceptually knew I was going to do this. I'd never done this before. Conceptually knew I was going to do this. Bought the stuff, started putting it down, gluing it on. I'm going, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is going to work. But it did. I really like how this turned out. It's actually one of my favorite effects of this. It like definitely looks like industrial flooring when it is completely not. It is like the furthest from industrial of this whole project, I would say. All right, so there's a bunch of sheets of Ida fabric cut out on a 45-degree angle to get that nice diamond tread look. Because there are the nature of cutting rectangles into triangular strips. They're going to be of various sizes, so I organized them. I wanted to burn through the larger ones first. I don't know why. It just felt like that's something I should do. So then we glue them on. We glue the Ida fabric onto the floors and hit them with a press, of course. They have these gaps in them. There they are, it's all stacked up. And then the interior sections have this kind of, the smaller bits, like they have to go together. These were measured out improperly and then glued on, possibly also improperly. There's a lot of problems with this. It is one of the weakest parts of the build, but yeah, if you're interested in doing this, I don't have any good ideas for this, other than do all your cuts afterward, which of course isn't possible. It's another picture I was really pleased of. I wanted to have the bridge section, so I just cut out, just like this kind of messed up line along. This is a test fit. Each one of the, there's no good pictures of this, so I'll just say it here, but each one of the pieces of floor had to be cut underneath so that it could fit into, it slots into the buttress, because the buttresses come up against the bottom of them. Some of them are thin enough that they can slide in easily. They're not all the same width, because I'm not that good at my job. But yeah, they all fit in there, and it took some cutting, but it worked out. These are strips of cardstock cut into, that looks like inch wide. Eric, if you're watching this, I like making fun of you, and you always get your measurements wrong. Not always, but you usually. You'll say, oh yeah, these are half-inch strips when they're clearly quarter-inch. Anyway, I believe these are, you know what, I can just count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Actually, that wasn't helpful at all. I'm going to say half-inch strip. I'm going to say these are half-inch strips. Anyway, these go along covering up the corrugation. Yeah, that's what I use for that. Here's a bunch more of them. These I think are 1-inch strips. These is from chronologically much earlier in the production process. But this court covers up the corrugation of the main panels, not the floors. But that brings us to this section. So a bunch more rivets later. So these are more rivet strips. You can kind of see on the lower sections of that. It's probably passed by now. But anyway, there's paper that's covering up the corrugation. I only did it on the exterior because I don't need to cover up the interior section. And then when, those are the ladder holes. So you gotta, anytime there's an edge, you gotta say this is an edge. This edge is supposed to be here. It doesn't look bad. And then the top piece there is, that's a seam between where the two pieces of Ida fabric come up against each other. Really nothing wrong with just saying, hey, in the industrial future, there's gaps, we're going to have to cover them up. I mean, they use steel plates for roadways. You throw them over roadways and people complain about them because they bump really hard. But yeah, it's a perfectly fine section. I was a little unhappy about how I didn't randomly distribute the seams throughout the panels. So I think there's more seams further outside of the of the floor sections, like further towards the exterior of the structure. There's more seams there. I don't know exactly how that happened, but anyway, it's a thing that happened, and I'm fine with it. I would have preferred to have them distributed throughout, and there's no reason I couldn't just throw an extra, fake seams covering up perfectly good IDA fabric, but something to think about in the future, which is not going to happen because I'm not going to do this again because it was a ton of work. All right, so this is I don't want to say this is a test fit because this is way too many pieces for me to have test fit, but they're all there. They're glued in. I'm going to say they're glued in. This is one segment, so I've glued the kind of like, I don't know exactly how to call those, but they're like the mini pieces, the mini floor sections. And then I did this kind of like wrap around thing. So they're deeper into the structure, so you kind of have to be looking for them. Also, it's very difficult to light this for photography. But that's what I did for the seams. It's just a piece of cardstock and then a bunch of rivets on it to like kind of cover up the gaps. It works because it's just like, hey, everything is messed up and everything is like, especially when it gets painted, it's just so grungy when it's painted. You're like, these are mismeasured. I don't care. The walls are literally rusting off. So it works. All right, so this is another shot of them coming together. As you can see, there are a bunch of gaps. Those are not fixed. I just have gaps. One of the comments on Reddit was like, oh, it's great how you seamlessly brought this together. I'm like, excuse me? There's nothing seamless about this, man. Like, there are huge gaps. I can literally see light looking through the central spire of this. I can see my window on the other. Like, I'm sitting at a table looking at this thing, and I can see the light on the other side. So yeah, there's pretty large gaps. I could take like a saw and just start like hacking at it and trying to get everything flush. I don't think I'm going to. We'll see how people react to it. If people are like, hey, we could fix this pretty easily, then I'll do it. But right now, I just don't see a way to do it easily. Another angle of that, yeah, so pretty big gaps. I don't really know how to fix this as far as how this could have been avoided. The wood panels that I have are not cut properly. The angles are wrong. And I just am not a good woodworker. I'm not a good enough craftsman to make that happen properly. Again, probably one of the weaker points of this build is there's just huge gaps running through segments of it. But it's also like, you look at this and you're like, okay, I know that this is, like, it has to be transportable. There's no way I was going to build. This is 4 foot by 4 foot. Like, it fits a regular Necromunda skirmish table fully. It goes from wall to wall. And to build that all as one piece would be insanely large and completely untransportable. Very difficult to wield. Right now it sits at like 60 something pounds. So people look at it and they're like, okay, I know that is going to be multiple sections. So it's got to have seams somewhere. And right now I'm okay with it. We'll see how people react and if people have good ideas about how to flush those out, how to make that not as big of a thing. All right, so then we're on to painting. So this is some of the 3D printed stuff. So you've got ladders, those might be off screen by now. In the lower right, you've got girders, like I-beams. There's some tanks there. Those trellisy things, those are the actual bridges, so you probably recognize them from before, but those actually have, they're face down right now, but those have railings on them. There's a bunch of ladders at the top, there's a bunch of boxes, and there's those things that look like ladders but are not ladders. Those are actually staircases, and those come up later. Anyway, here's just a gratuitous shot of 3D printed boxes, crates, ladders. Yeah, that's pretty much it. A lot of these are 3D printed. Let me know if you want the contact information of the guy who makes them. I can send you to his Etsy shop. Couldn't recommend him more. Absolutely fantastic working with him. And then a little more paint. I did not do a very good job of black priming, but I didn't have to do a great job. I did not Mod Podge the IDA fabric. I probably should have. I've seen a lot of people recommend Mod Podging stuff just because In the and this doesn't make any sense when you say it, but if you know what you're talking about, then it will. So for hobbyists, this is for you. For everyone else watching, then just disregard this. But the Ida fabric really eats up spray paint. Like it does not want to share. More so than paper, more so than cardboard. Um, it was crazy. I was just spraying into that, and I went through I think 6 cans of black primer. And these are like the double can, like full size spray paint cans. Advertises as more paint than usual, just the higher coverage because it's supposed to be the primer layer. This is all single coat. I didn't double coat the primer, and it still winds up with like large sections of it that are not probably spray paint. I also got a spray paint trigger handle. Definitely, my fingers felt really bad after doing this by just the finger. I bought the handle. If you use spray paint in this volume, absolutely go buy yourself one of those. They're like $3, $5. They're super cheap, very like I wouldn't say ergonomic because it's just a piece of plastic, but a lot of relief if you're going to be doing large volume spray painting. I wanted to include this as well. This is the first injury I sustained. At first and probably only. It's one of the. There weren't too many injuries on this project, but there's always some injury on this project. I had to bleed for this one, so that's what. Just wanted to throw that one in there. All right. So as I was saying, here is a black primed. I'm going to call it a central spire. This is like the main structure. Okay. And here is it with brown paint. So this is just a single coat of acrylic craft paint painted on by brush. In between these layers is actually another coat of brush painted black just to smooth everything out so that everything is the same layer. Also so that the brush strokes are consistent across it. I realized when I was painting acrylic on there, I'm going to get brush strokes. So I have to do it over the primed and non-primed areas. Don't know that the primer was entirely necessary in hindsight. I think it added a good layer. Just of guarantee. But it also, the painted section got into every nook and every cranny because it was done by hand. Anyway, so here's the brown section for comparison. And yeah, just added that onto the next layer. There is a second layer in here. It's of light brown. Actually, that previous one may have been light brown. Brown and light brown. Anyway, it goes black prime, black paint, black hand paint. Brown hand paint. It was like a heavy dry brush layer. Light brown, like as in a lighter. It's mixed a little bit of yellow. It tried to mix in orange, but it just came out as a yellow. Mixed in an orange, yellow, brown, lighter dry brush layer over the top. Excuse me. And then a silver. Now this one already has some stuff glued down onto it, but you can kind of see like that's where we're going with it. Here's another set of images of the process. So this is the dark brown layer. This is the light brown layer, a little bit more orange to it. Brings out, also the lighting is not consistent between these photographs, but whatever. But a little bit more rust to it. And then here's the metal. Again, lighting is very different, but this, I was actually happy. I got to this point and I was like, I could just leave it like this. I don't have to keep working on this. I knew I was going to do more work on it because there was more stuff I had to do. But I was looking at this going, this is getting playable. Like this project is not going to fail. It can be salvaged. Not that it was ever in any jeopardy, but going to this, I was like, because I was talking to people about this as well when I was building it. You get to a point in any modeling, at least I do it, modeling a terrain project where it's like, oh, this is finally coming to life. Usually it's when I paint the flesh tones on models. I'm like, oh, this model is finally coming to life. I've been painting on like clothes and weapons and whatever. You put the flesh layer on, I'm like, okay, this is a model of a person. This is actually gonna work. And it just, I don't know, it changes my mentality of it. Where everything else, before it was kind of building it up, and now it's just touching it up. So here's another shot of that. It's just the silver metallic layer, dry brush over it. Still a lot of grunge to it, still a lot of rust. And a lot of swirl motions so that you keep the rust in the corners where it would naturally go unbothered. Don't know what that blue glow is. I'm assuming it's a computer or a television or something, but a friend of mine asked me for a scale image. So that's what that is. Here's another, this is probably after the orange dry brush, it looks like. And then after the metallic dry brush. All right, so that's the painting process of all of the rest of the stuff. I actually don't have photos of all of the pieces that are glued into it. There's barrels and boxes and crates and pallets and all sorts of stuff. These are one of the more ingenious ones, if I do say so myself. They're spark plugs. They took a while to find on eBay, but I just got a bunch of cheap spark plugs. I think these are dirt bike spark plugs. They're like $1 something each. They just look industrial, mechanical, and they don't do anything. They just look cool. So I mounted them onto leftover buttresses, just glued them on there, PVA. There's literally I want to say 3.5 liters of PVA in this building. Like literally, I bought a gallon, and I'm 70, 80% of the way through it. Yeah, 70 to 80% of the way through it. It's an insane amount of glue. It's cardboard and glue essentially, and then other stuff thrown on top of it. Here they are painted. This is one step in the process. I think they got a silver dry brush after this. Maybe that's, oh, no, that's left. Left is the, is pre-silver dry brush. Right is post-silver dry brush. So I think it went black, brown, light brown, silver, color, silver dry brush. I want to say that was the sequence there. I did not want to do a lot of work painting wood, so I just kind of did this weird camo. Everything is wood grain. Like the entire box is made out of the same piece of wood. It's very silly, but I wasn't going to do wood grain on there. It's so many pieces. There's so many panels. I wasn't going to do it. I like the way they came out. You can definitely look at it and go, oh yeah, I know what that is. And they're dry brushed enough, and there's enough texture on them that you can kind of tell, that's supposed to be a crate, that's supposed to be a pallet. You also recognize the shapes. So there's an Inquisitor and Terminator armor, just because somebody asked me for a close-up. More 3D printed barrels. I specifically asked, if you're looking at this and going, oh God, he screwed up. No, I specifically asked for the more messed up things, the more messed up 3D print runs. So I was like, yeah, it'll just make the weathering process that much easier because I could rust them up. I can, do whatever I want with them. It has the texture there already. There are also a very lot of clean 3D prints. I didn't want all of them to be perfectly clean. So I was very, very pleased with the ones that I got. Here's another shot of in progress. So we're adding some of the, you can actually see where they are. The PVA is still wet. But glue on the bridges. There's a picture of the bridge with the railings. Glue on the boxes. Glue on the. There's just glue patches. I was thinking of doing like a kind of slime, like mixing some green paint or green food coloring, green ink, whatever. Make it kind of like slime look to the like slime pools on the ground. I didn't actually do it. Could still go back and do it. I'm not sure. But for now, I just went with like weird pools of like, wait, what is that? Like, I don't want to be stepping in that. It dries clear, so you can't really see them unless you know what you're looking for or you feel them. The way the Ida fabric and the Ida fabric is glued onto the cardboard with glue, which is with those two materials, you're going to get some warping. So there's sections of it that are really warped in a very fabric-y way, which is actually didn't turn out to be the end of the world because I could just. That added a lot of texture when it came to dry brushing, so I can paint the furrows, the troughs of the waves, deeper colors, and then highlight the peaks of the waves. That worked out pretty well. Yeah. This is lying on the ground, hence the weird coloration. I think I just added in a couple of like pillars. This is getting towards the end of the gluing everything in place process. Here's another shot with some models on it, getting towards the end here. Uh, another shout out to Eric's Hobby Workshop. I didn't do the second. I don't have a picture of the second layer, but this is some of the like water um, water stain, rust stain effects that he does really well. If you see his work, it really showcases this really well. I tried to mimic that. I like how it turned out. A couple of times the drops would get away from me and they would just run off in ways that I thought were unrealistic, which of course is ironic because at that point it was real life physics governing how this should drip. But that was fun. It was actually very relaxing after doing all of this work. I was just like, I'm just gonna drip paint on this. Very relaxing part of the process. All right, so this was one of the last things to get built. These are, so the floors do not wrap around on their own. They just come out and then shoot out past the end of the walls. And I needed something there. And originally, if you go back in this video and look at the original design, they're going to wrap around properly. But in the course of this, I threw down, you can actually see it in this photo, you could see how the paper that covers up the corrugation wrapped all the way around in like where another piece of another section should be. And so it just didn't happen. And I just didn't work on it. The project continued without fixing that one problem. So we got to the end and I was like, all right, what's the deal? So I kicked around a couple of ideas. I have a bunch of bolts that I bought the wrong size, so I just have a shitload of bolts left over. I could have just laid those down as like this weird bridge kind of thing. Didn't want to do that, honestly, because I didn't want to paint them. I could cut out sections of foam core, wrap paper around the edges, probably rivet a bunch of stuff, and then do that. Problem with that, you would need 36 paper wrappings of foam core. After doing 400 of them for buttresses, I don't want to touch another paper wrap in the rest of my life. Didn't want to do that. So this is the kind of really kind of crappy middle ground that I wound up with. But I like it. I honestly, I like it. I like, they look like metal plates. They just look like someone threw a bunch of metal plates on the ground. They got rivets in them, of course, because everything in this project has rivets. But it's, yeah, I like how they work out. I'm testing them out right now. They're somewhat, secure. They're somewhat stable. If you put a 25 millimeter model on them, it's going to be sitting. It's most likely, unless you intentionally put it directly in the middle because the cap isn't that big, it's most likely going to be sitting on one side or the other. So there's not really a question of structural stability, structural support. If there isn't enough structural support, it's only cardstock. I could just cut out more pieces. These were scrap pieces anyway. These are actually the remainders of when I cut out the doors, because when I cut out the doors and windows, I cut out the cardboard first, then I cladded the cardstock over them, and then I cut into that with, I cut out the sections of the doors again for reasons. Anyway, it worked. I like how they look. It is one of the more unstable areas. Visually speaking of it, like everything else is like half-inch thick cardboard turned into metal through the magic of terrain building and paint. And these are like, no, you're taking your life in your own hands if you're going to walk across these. All right, so here's another image of them. This is pretty close to done. There's a couple of things left to do. So these are lengths of chain, just hobby chain, bottom of a craft store chain, and this is called aluminum wire. I'm not really sure what it's for. I was gonna have like railings, but then I looked at it, I'm like, this stuff is way too flimsy. It's just gonna bend. I can't make wire like railings out of this. So instead, I just cut them up into these loops, and they are used. Not like that actually. That's just draped over the top and then super glued. I don't know how I feel. I could just go back and get rid of the frosting of the super glue. I don't feel strongly about it at the moment, but I don't know. I might clean that up. I'm not sure. Anyway, the loops are used to keep the chains on. In some places, the chains are just glued onto the, and the wires as well. Glued on with just just directly PVA or super glue directly into the roof above them. But a lot of cases, as you can kind of see here, um, there's a little bit of a hook. So I with an X-Acto knife, cut 2 holes in the bottom of each floor section, lay the chain across it, glue the little U shape, the horseshoe, into place, so that the chains hang free. The chains hang free. The wires are actually bent into that shape. They don't free hang like the chains do. I mean, they kind of free hang, but if let me put it this way: if you flipped one of these panels upside down, the chains would follow gravity. The wires don't. And I like the way the wires look. It kind of gives us like haphazard. We're doing our best we can to make things work here. Things are falling apart sort of look. So that brings us to the end. Semi-finished final product. Things that I would want to add to improve this. There are sections where the water effects did not turn out well, so I need to redo those. You can't see them here, but there are stairs. You probably remember them from the section with the black spray paint, but there's stairs that need to be added onto this. The bottom floor of each level of each panel, on each of the panels there is a bottom floor because it actually alternates left to right. You can kind of see it on the bottom left-hand corner. There's a ladder well there, but there's no ladder under it. So I have to add 6 more ladders in a way that they're not going to get knocked off during handling. Haven't figured that out yet. Not all of the panels will stand up on their own. Many of them tilt or lean or completely fall over. So I need to reinforce the bases of them to get that to figure it out. I'm thinking of like doing a base plate kind of thing. Haven't really done it yet. Not really sure, but that's the plan. And graffiti. I want to add graffiti. If you have ideas for graffiti, things that you want to see on here, let me know. Get in touch with me. Do not throw it in the comments of this video because I will not read it. They will not get read. Don't bother commenting. Don't bother subscribing because there's no more content coming unless I link it. Like if you want, but I don't really care. Share it with your friends though, please. If you would think they would find it interesting, do that. But this was Rivet City, aka Hotel Necromunda, aka the Asterisk. If you have a good name that you think you want to go on there, and don't say like Steve is awesome. I mean, Steve's perfectly fine, but I'm not going to name it that. Let me know. Get in touch. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.